All right, so today we're brewing up an IPA, and I've got a little bit of calcium chloride for our water adjustment. The water we have here is fairly soft, so usually for an IPA, I'll use calcium chloride to kind of enhance the hop character of the beer. And so yeah, just add it in this 15-gallon batch. I'm just using basically 1 gram per gallon of calcium chloride. The last little bit out of there. You can use gypsum if you're doing a maltier style of beer. Just get the water moving around a bunch so the grain doesn't stick together. It's usually pretty easy to tell if you have grain sticking together because it'll float. Yeah, there we go. Got our about 36 pounds of grain. Nice mix between wheat and oats and barley. A little bit of carafoam for foam stability. And I'm just going to check our recirculation here to make sure that we have flow.
So you kept that going, you didn't shut it off?
I kept it, yeah, I kept it going just so I know it's keeping the temperature right where I want it. So as I'm bringing this flow rate down, I'm also going to have to adjust this flow rate. Today we are here brewing at the BräuPro Supply headquarters, and we're brewing up a IPA with our Pro version 2 system. So we have a 20-gallon conical fermenter, and then we have a 20-gallon mash tun. So basically like a brew-in-one where we can have 2 pumps set up, so we're able to recirculate the wort, boil in the conical, ferment in the conical, and just use the mash tun just for mashing and sparging. The really good opportunity with this system in a bigger batch, like a 15-gallon batch that we're doing today, is that we can keep our sparge water in the jacket. So that sparge water is already being heated up by the element, by the process. So as we heat up to mash out temperature after our mash step, then we're already going to have our sparge water ready to go at temperature. So we don't need a separate vessel to heat it. One of the big challenges, or not challenges, but one of the things to always be aware of is where the element is in the conical, and just ensuring the flow rate is the same. So I kind of have a point picked out in there that I kind of keep it right on between 2 points, and then in the mash tun I have the same thing. So I just gotta, every couple of minutes, just make a little adjustment here and there and keep the flow rate, and that just helps to maintain the mash temperature. We're mashed in at 163. It maintained the temperature right through the mash in, and now we are at holding at 162 Fahrenheit for a 60-minute mash. So we're just coming to the end of our mash rest, and so we've finished all of our conversion, checked the pH. pH is at 5.3, right where I was aiming it with the calcium chloride water adjustment, which is great. Something might work different for your area depending on the water that you have in your area. So I've increased the temperature on our control panel to 172 to be about the 78 degrees Celsius mash out. So we're running that on a 10-minute mash out cycle just to end the starch conversion in the grain. And as soon as that's complete, Then we will start slowly running off into the conical, and then we'll set up our sparge step. Yeah, so we have the way we have our setup for our brew day today. We're using 2 pumps. So we have our first pump, our larger pump pushing our wort up to the top, which we have a ball valve so we can control the flow into the mash tun, and then coming out of the mash tun, we have our smaller pump that we typically use only for water, going back into the conical. And then I have the controlled flow right now, just keeping the flow rate low and slow so we're not going too fast as well. Prevents air bubbles from building up. Come to the end of our mash out step at 78 Celsius. So I'm just going to turn off our pumps, and then we'll be able to set up for our sparge.
So quiet.
Just concentrating on trying not to make a mess is sometimes more difficult. So yeah, just connecting the sparge setup. Just a little quick connect on the inside. We'll connect the valve back up, and then we'll be ready to start spraying. And then yeah, just easy, quick connects in there. I always line up my clamps so the elbows of the clamps are pointing up, and then I know exactly that our sprayers are pointing down and not to the side, so you don't spray yourself in the face. All right, so I'm gonna open a couple valves. All right, so we're set up for our sparge step. We have all our sparge water here in the jacket of our conical. So I've got a valve here hooked up and our hose going to our water pump. And that's going to, for one, rinse out any of the wort that was in that pump. And then that's going straight up here into our sparge arm. We've got that all set up and ready to go. And then we're coming out of the bottom here and we're just running through the pump, and we'll just have kind of a gradual like gravity feed to start that transfer until we come to an equilibrium between both vessels, and then we'll use the pump to get us the rest of the way. So let's turn on the pump here and get the sparge started. Finished up our sparging and transferring our wort to the conical for boiling, and we're just gonna, I've got my refractometer here, we're just gonna do a quick gravity check. So you can see there in the video we're at 59.9 liters, kettle full type thing, and we're just gonna check our gravity, see where we're at. All right, so we're at 1057, which is just below 14 Plato, and that's pretty good. It's a couple points low as what we were expecting pre-boil, but that's okay. We could extend the boil by another 5 minutes and we should be able to hit that gravity, no problem. Just approaching the end of the boil here. I'm gonna turn off our boil element off. And so now we're gonna hook up for our whirlpool loop, and then we'll be able to get onto sterilizing our lid and sterilizing the pump. And then we will, after 20 minutes, start cooling down into our like kind of our perfect spot at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit for our whirlpool of hops. We have a open. Lots of bubbles. All right, let's get the pump on. Watch it.
You're going to put the lid on.
I am going to put the lid on, but I want to make sure it's moving and it's stable before I put the lid on. I always feel like Elysian when they name their beer Space Dust. They kind of looked in the boil one day and they're like, oh, look at all the proteins floating around. That looks like space dust. We should name a beer after that. And then they did, and it's one of their most popular beers. So we know we have our temperature good. We're just going to, I'll set a timer here for 20 minutes for sterilization, and that'll help bring the temperature down in our boil, or in our conical as well, and then it'll get us closer to pitching hops. Open one of these. Why? Because it's sealed?
Beauty.
All right, so we're just coming to the end of our sterilization process here. We've got the lid on, we've got an exhaust vent going so we can still blow off a little bit of steam, literally. And then we're running the pump to run our, just to help cool it down a little bit faster and sterilize the pump and the hoses before we cool it down a little bit before we add our whirlpool hops. So we've got the advantage of having a few extra hoses in the brewery here. So I've got our exit going back to the sink out of the jacket, and then our entrance coming here, just come into our tap, easy on, just kind of start it slow, because there's definitely a lot of air and heat in there that's going to want to come rushing out. And I'll just keep an eye on the control panel. The jacket's really good, really efficient at cooling things down, so I'm going to stop it at about 188, and I'm going to add the hops then, because I know right away the efficiency of that jacket's going to cool down the wort inside the conical very quickly. So yeah, from 203 we're already at 201, and there's not even water coming through yet. So
Sweet.
We'll just keep the whirlpool spinning, open the lid, throw the hops in. We are using, we have so much hops today, we're using our flaked wheat bin. So we're doing a Simcoe and Mosaic Hazy IPA. So got 7.5 ounces of Mosaic, 7.5 ounces of Simcoe. So we've got an ounce per gallon going into the whirlpool. Got our temperature down to our whirlpool hopping temperature at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we have our hops here, a mix of equal parts Simcoe and equal parts Mosaic. So we're using a little bit different, like not just, strikeout temperature. There goes some hops through the pump, making some noise, but it'll be just fine. Oh, it smells so good. So yeah, we're using a little bit cooler temperature so we can not suck out so much bitterness, but we can also pull out a lot more of the aromas and the flavors that we really want to have in the finished product. All right, so we've just come to the end of our kind of cool down whirlpool, getting our temperature down to our pitching temperature. We're at 104 Fahrenheit. I'm looking to get about 95, 96 Fahrenheit. So in the next, 10, 15 minutes as we dump the Trub and get our stuff out from the boil and then get ready to pitch yeast, I think we'll be at that temperature. So I've already sanded down the port here at the bottom. We've got a 2-inch port. I'm just going to spray it down again. There's no, can never have really too much sandy on there, star sand on the right on the door. Hit this, a little hard to see, but I'm basically just going to open it up slowly because there's still a fair bit of pressure in there. Oh yeah, it's like a baby pooping. Like one moment there's a little bit, and then boom, it hits you in the face. But you don't want to go too fast because then the stuff that's in the middle just goes straight out, and the stuff that's stuck to the sides doesn't have time to go down to the bottom. So you gotta go a little bit and stop. Got some of that in my mouth. That was good. Like butterscotch. I think that's pretty good. It was starting to turn a little bit yellow there. So I got about a gallon out, gallon and a bit. Pretty, oh, it smells so good. Mosaic and Simcoe, just, I want to bathe in it. It smells so good. We've just taken a little bit of our kind of bottom sample off the bottom of the conical after the boil, hops and proteins and stuff like that. Want to kind of clean it out, rinse it out, get it on the floor, make a mess. Just want to make it as clean as possible. So if we have to open this valve again, we're not harboring any bacteria in there. So yeah, there we go. And we're not going to rotate any more through our whirlpool line. So I can take this valve off as well. And similar thing, even a smaller pour, just get it in there. Get it all clean. No shame in a little extra sanding on the floor to get it all clean. So today we've been brewing this Hazy IPA, and we've got a pure pitch pack of White Labs WLP 518 Opshag. Comes from Norway. It's, I mean, Kveik's yeast, and it's just super versatile yeast that we can pitch at a higher temperature. I plan on trying to keep this fermentation above 30 Celsius, around 30 to 35 Celsius. So that's pushing 95, 96 Fahrenheit. Trying to push those tropical flavors. We whirlpooled with Mosaic and Simcoe. We really want to pull that through. Day 3 of fermentation, we're really going to see the end of fermentation. That's when I'm going to dry hop, because I want to see it come through the end of fermentation. And as we see some of the transitions of different flavor profiles, and then we're going to let it sit warm for a couple days, crash it, so the yeast will be able to work with the hops, and then the hops will get a little bit more of extract at different temperatures, if that makes sense to anybody. That's my experience. Less dangerous than dry hopping at high Krausen, where you can risk a hop volcano, which nobody wants. That's just a waste. So this is, yeah, something very versatile. We're at 156 Fahrenheit right now. I'm just gonna crank on the cold water here. When we pulled down to our whirlpool temperature, we didn't even fill up the full jacket, and we dropped 20 degrees. So here we go, there's the water. So it was pretty close to being full. And this will start cooling off really quick. So I'm just gonna keep the flow fairly low, because I don't want it to be too aggressive when it decides to just shut down on the temperature. I want to make sure I'm pitching at the temperature I really want to pitch at, instead of trying to reheat it back up again. So yeah, I forgot to pull out the yeast a little bit earlier, too early. It's warmed up. I would say it's like room temperature in here, which is usually about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, about 15 Celsius. So it's warmed up. Just trying to get it moving around, and so there's no solids in the pouch. So as soon as I pitch, it's clean. I don't have to rinse it or anything like that. Get as much yeast in there as I can. So yeah, one pitch pack for 15 gallons, I still think is an overpitch. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what it can pull. I've done it with El Dorado, haven't done it with these hops. So yeah, interested to see how the flavor profile of the yeast works with the flavor profile and the aromas from the hops.
That's still hot?
It's a little warm still, yeah. Oh, it's green.
Look at that.
We're ready to pitch our yeast here. We're at 99 Fahrenheit, which is perfect. Temperature's coming down pretty slow, but it's still coming down. After pitching, the residual temperature in here, we're guessing, is around 65 Fahrenheit. So we've got our yeast pack, we've got our Sandy, I've got my scissors on my Leatherman here. So I'm just gonna kind of spray down the lid, kind of get ready to take that off. Spray down the yeast pack, spray down your scissors, your knife, or whatever you use. I'm not using my knife because I feel like my knife's a little bit porous, and I might risk infection. So, make sure you cut it far enough down so you open the yeast bag. And make sure you squeeze everything out without dropping your plastic yeast insert into your fermenter. Every milliliter counts. Every milliliter's got millions and millions of yeast cells. There we go. All right, just give this a quick little spray. Get a good contact. Spray around the top. Non-rinse sandy. Not a big deal for a little in there. And because I'm a bit of a snob for my tri-clamps, I make sure I match it to the other one. We'll take the other one off and put an airlock on here in a minute. There we go. Ready to have 6.5% Hazy IPA in about 4 days. Kegged in 6.
Love it.